Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CMA and CMA's weekly webinar series. I'm Jackie Lewis, Content Director here at the CMA, and I'm going to be your host for today's presentation. And today our webinar is actually going to be a little bit different than our usual format. For those that joined us at our virtual conference this June, you'll be familiar with some of the enhanced audio and visual capabilities that you're going to be seeing for today's webinar. I'm thrilled to be introducing our presenter and actually my old colleague, Russ Dieringer, founder and CEO of Stratably. His company provides digital commerce professionals with proprietary research, data, and thought leadership that drives conviction and ignites new possibilities. And prior to founding Stratably, Russ helped hundreds of manufacturers develop their digital strategies through a combination of industry-leading events, research, and consultative work at Cleveland Research Company. And I can personally say he knows more about the e-commerce landscape than just about anyone I have ever met. So I am about to hit play on a pre-recorded video for Russ's presentation on the rise of the 30-minute or less delivery landscape. And I do have our presenter, Russ Dieringer, on the line to join us at the end for live Q&A. So please feel free to enter questions at any point during the video in the chat box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, as we'll have plenty of time after the video plays with Russ live afterward. And then finally, a copy of the recording is going to be available to everyone that registered in our resource library on demand in the next day or so. And we'll also be sending out an email to everyone that registered with that link to the replay as well. So without further ado, I give you Russ.
I'm Russ Dieringer, founder of Stratably, and I'm here to talk about the digital landscape in grocery and convenience channels. 2021 has ushered in so much change to this industry. New entrants, new partnerships, and new consumer expectations around the speed at which they want their items. So I've created a presentation that breaks down different segments of the market and highlights the most interesting developments in this space. For those of you unfamiliar with Stratably, I founded the company to help retail professionals better understand how to profitably gain share in digital commerce. My research covers a range of topics, everything from analyzing Amazon, Walmart, retail media networks, supply chain, social commerce, and even how organizations are evolving as a result of digital. And it's designed to keep VPs of e-commerce at the leading edge of what's changing and what's coming next. Okay, so I want you to imagine a few different scenarios. This is one I've got reacquainted with recently with the birth of our second child. Full disclosure, this is not him, this is just stock imagery, but nonetheless, it conveys what a lot of parents face when their little ones are not feeling well. Or if that doesn't hit home, maybe you face a daunting task of figuring out all the groceries you need to buy to last you over the next 7 days. That's 21 meals and a heck of a lot of items to buy. Checking the cupboards and fridge for what's out and what you need, not a lot of fun. Or if that one doesn't hit, maybe this one will. You're out with friends, late at night, having a great time, but in no shape to operate anything close to a car. So what did we used to have to do in those scenarios? In the case of the crying baby, we had to get in our car and make our way over to the closest store to get whatever medicine we needed. With creating a grocery list, if you're like me, you sort of just couldn't think past 3 or 4 dinners, so you resorted to takeout, which isn't always the healthiest or best value. And if you're out late with friends, you probably just crashed and went to bed hungry, inviting that dreaded hangover in the morning. In summary, the old days were mostly inconvenient. And this is the type of stuff we'll try to explain to our grandkids. You know, believe it or not, we had to actually get in the car and go get infant Tylenol when your father was a baby. Because nowadays, we increasingly don't have to do those types of things. The image on the left is my real Gopuff order when my wife called saying our newborn had a fever and asked if I could pick up some infant Tylenol on the way home. I ordered it from Gopuff instead and got it in 14 minutes from pressing order to having it in hand. Ignore the candy that I ordered along with it. If you're in New York City, you don't have to do a full weekly shopping list. You just get home and you order whatever you feel like making from Gorillas or its instant grocery rivals, and they'll have it there in less than 15 minutes. And if you're out late at night, go ahead and place an order with DoorDash's DashMart to cap off the evening. In other words, companies have come into the market, backed by serious institutional capital, to remove the inconveniences of yesteryear. Think about how complex the online grocery market has become over the last 18 months, much of it driven by the pandemic. This is where it started. We've got delivery speed on the y-axis and assortment on the x-axis. And look, it's a bit of an oversimplification, but when it came to doing online grocery, most consumer brands a year and a half ago were mostly focused on Walmart, Amazon Fresh, and then Instacart. And then you had Gopuff, positioned uniquely in the market, digitizing the convenience channel. It bet that consumers would value a faster delivery speed that was open 24/7 in exchange for a more limited assortment. But what happened from here? Well, for one, you had more of your traditional grocery channels create a digital offering, either their own or in partnership. You also had new Instacart competitors enter grocery, including Uber Eats and DoorDash. You had Kroger launch its Ocado-powered model in Florida and Ohio and subsequently expanding it to California. And this model is all about improving the economics of online grocery and Kroger controlling more of the experience. It offered greater assortment, but it takes at least a day to get to the consumer. In the e-convenience space, Gopuff improved its services going from 30-minute delivery to around 20 to 25-minute delivery. DoorDash launched a new initiative called DashMart, which was meant to take Gopuff on directly. Then you had the rise of instant grocers in New York City. These are players that promise delivery in 10 to 15 minutes and position themselves as replacing the weekly stock-up trip. Joining them in New York City are Gopuff with its own instant grocery offering and DoorDash via an investment in Flink. And then you get Instacart and the grocers wanting in on the e-convenience scene with the launch of Instacart's Convenience Hub and early partners Kroger, Giant Company, and Stop & Shop. And finally, you get Kroger launching its Zoom offering in Florida, where it can deliver in as fast as 30 minutes with over 10,000 items to choose from. To say this is a dynamic market is a major, major understatement. So really interesting times, so much change happening. And I'm going to talk about really 3 areas in the market. Gopuff first, then I'll talk about the instant grocers, and then the Omni-Enablers. And I'll leave with some thoughts about the industry looking forward. So let's talk Gopuff. This is the market again. Gopuff is really the pioneer around e-convenience, and its success has attracted Instacart and DoorDash, and to some extent, instant grocers and Kroger. And as I mentioned, it's also playing in the instant grocery space itself with its recent entrance into New York City. The company has seen its valuation grow nearly 4x since last October with its recent $1 billion fundraise valuing the firm at $15 billion. And it's backed by the most prominent growth technology investors that exist. Part of what's attracting capital to Gopuff is that it's profitable in markets it's been in for over a year. That is very uncommon amongst tech-oriented companies, but it's helping it scale and continue to raise funds. It's using those funds in a variety of ways, including building out its executive ranks. Most recently, it hired 2 former Amazonians to lead its North America fulfillment operations, and it's expanding rapidly, opening up 30 MFCs per month. They're making acquisitions in Europe and so on. And its trajectory compares favorably with peers like Instacart and DoorDash. Over the same period, Instacart's valuation has grown 5x, DoorDash is up 9x as it's now a publicly traded company. Of course, this is off a smaller base, but nonetheless, it's certainly indicative of Gopuff becoming as serious of an account as these 2 rivals. Gopuff's business model is fairly straightforward. It operates its own micro-fulfillment centers, which carry approximately 4,000 items. These items are sourced from both distributors and the brands themselves. In the case of sourcing from brands, distributors still tend to be the one fulfilling as it's too expensive for brands to ship directly to all of the micro FCs, and few brands are currently shipping to Gopuff's cross-docks. Gopuff employs gig economy workers to deliver the items from the warehouse to the customer. These gig workers have told me they like working for Gopuff versus, say, DoorDash, as the orders are all within a couple miles of the distribution center, whereas a DoorDash order could take you all the way 10 miles plus outside of an urban center. Customers pay a $1.95 delivery fee plus any tip for the service. Item pricing is sort of all over the place. Some brands have told me they see their items priced in line with the convenience channel, while others have seen pricing both at a premium and at a discount. And the original value proposition still remains why Gopuff shoppers really like it. This is really unique data that we analyzed in partnership with Numerator and the Category Management Association. I have not seen any other consumer studies on this account, so a big thank you to Numerator for providing it. We asked 200 Gopuff shoppers a variety of questions, and when it came to why they use the site, the top ranking was that they needed items quickly, closely followed by liking the fact that it's open 24 hours a day. In terms of categories, you can see snacks and grocery items are leading the way in terms of the most popular. And down towards the bottom, you see Gopuff making traction with some of its newer categories, including baby and pet. And as the grocery market diagram indicated, Gopuff and the instant grocers are really trading off assortment breadth for delivery speed. The chart on the right illustrates 82% of its consumers are satisfied or neutral to its assortment versus 18% unhappy with it. When it comes to pitching Gopuff on your items, it's typically looking for eaches, especially with new categories or brands it carries. Over time, it's willing to experiment with larger pack sizes, but given the use case for the platform in limited MFC space, eaches are the right pack size to start with on the account. Gopuff has not crossed into daily or weekly use for the vast majority of its consumers. But you can see that 42% of Gopuff shoppers are using the site at least on a monthly basis. Now, in contrast, the instant grocers are saying they're attempting to get their shoppers to use it daily. Gopuff's not really attempting that necessarily. They're more so digitizing convenience, whereas the instant grocers are trying to change grocery altogether. There are a variety of marketing activations on the platform, everything from out-of-home billboard, co-marketing, to social reshares, to featured placements, to BOGOs. It also has programmatic options, tapping into their consumer data, not dissimilar from many of your other retail partners. It also really pushes sampling. However, I talked with a handful of brands on this one, and they describe that program as quite expensive. And then a lot of brands are often most interested in learning about paid search on Gopuff just because of how important it is on Amazon, Instacart, and elsewhere. Certainly important here too, but it behaves a little bit differently because in some categories, there isn't a full search page of results, meaning there's less of a need to advertise. So this is an example of paid search and how it might be different than, say, what you experience on Instacart. On the left are results for when you search ice cream. And then you can see this is a highly competitive category on the site. The first 3 listings are ads. On the right is when you search for energy bar. There's only one type of Cliff Bar for sale as a result. Now, there are ads for energy drinks, but if you're Cliff, you're in a different situation than if you're Ben & Jerry's. So your total economics with Gopuff are going to differ. In some categories, you have to account for high paid search spend to drive growth, while others don't need to do that as much, which impacts the P&L. And we'll talk about instant grocers later, but the same principle is likely to hold. Now, the big question when it comes to doing marketing activations is how should it be funded? Is Gopuff generating incremental sales, in which case it's easier to find dollars to support it, or is it gaining share from other channels, in which case maybe marketing dollars have to shift? The chart at the left illustrates 27% of those we surveyed indicated they make purchases on Gopuff that they otherwise wouldn't make, meaning they're incremental. Meanwhile, 50% and 52% indicate they use Gopuff instead of buying those items at a grocery or convenience store. Now, the chart on the right illustrates where else Gopuff shoppers shop. Certainly a big portion use Amazon, but you see Walmart towards the top, you've got DoorDash up there, and then from a convenience channel, 7-Eleven was ranked highest. So if you get that question around incrementality, you can say it's a mix. Some of it's share gain and some of it's purely incremental. So for Gopuff, I think this is becoming a very important account to pay attention to. And on this slide, I highlight the key considerations for brands. I won't go through all of these, but first and foremost, you want to assign the account to the e-commerce team. And if you have a big team, it's likely to become the responsibility of the group or individual managing alternative digital accounts. From a funding perspective, most are using some version of test and learn budgets right now as the account is quite small. Over time, that might change, but it is generating some amount of incremental sales, which should be considered as you make those funding decisions. And you do need to pay attention to how competitive your category is when you start evaluating the overall cost to serve, as there might be less of a need to spend money on paid search given the more limited assortment being offered. Okay, let's talk about instant grocers, which in many ways are pretty similar to the Gopuff model, but really trying to fundamentally change how we shop for groceries. So we're back to the diagram to understand where instant grocers fit in the market. And a lot of these, like Gorillas and Bike, got started in Europe or international markets and then launched in New York City this year. And they carry less assortment than Gopuff or certainly a traditional grocer, focusing instead on speed. Now, I included this slide in here because I think it's easy to write off instant grocers as overhyped, too much capital has come in, et cetera, et cetera. But when you look at the CEOs of these firms, you start to get an appreciation that they have really strong startup backgrounds. Oleg at 1520 is seemingly the least experienced, but Ralph Wenzel, Slava Bokarov have really strong startup pedigrees. And as a result, they're capable of raising big funding rounds and executing their plans. This chart shows total funding to date. Gorillas is the second most capitalized behind Gopuff, recently raising nearly $1 billion at a $2.1 billion valuation. And this is pretty incredible because 6 months ago, it was just valued at $1 billion. And even more incredible is the company only got started in 2020. So it's been essentially a rocket ship since it started. And then you can see the rest of the list from here. Flink is interesting in that DoorDash was one of the lead investors in it. Now on the right, you have job openings in the US. And this is really interesting. I would have thought the instant grocers, given all the money they raised, would be on more of a hiring tear. But perhaps it just goes to show how much money they're burning with each order that they're hiring so few people at this point. Now this might ramp more as they expand to more cities, but even Gorillas has said it's pausing its US expansion to focus on improving the operations of the business before moving into LA or Chicago. The model is pretty straightforward. They're leasing up small space throughout different parts of the city. There was a recent article that said on average each had about 15 leases and more on the way. And they lease and operate these warehouses that are not accessible to the public. Orders come in through the app, they're picked and packed, and then bike couriers that are employees of the company deliver the items. Fees vary, but somewhere between free and up to $2 depending on the service. The most obvious differences between this model and Gopuff's is the use of company employees that ride bikes to deliver the items, and then the even more refined breadth of assortment. Instant grocers MFCs essentially have no automation. The speed comes from the small assortment itself and trained pickers that get very familiar with the convenience store size space. Given the small size, these MFCs are receiving new items throughout the day from distribution partners, and it's very complex in that regard. There have been a number of articles which talked about Gopuff having to waste a lot of food that was left outside as it couldn't keep up with the level of inbound product. But once an order is picked, they then hand it off to a bike courier. And Gorillas really seems to be marketing its riders on its website, making them sort of the hero behind the service. And like I mentioned, the bike riders are company employees rather than gig economy workers. Now, I really encourage each of you to download these different apps to get a feel for what they look like, what type of information is on there for the products, what types of activations are happening. For Joker, my tests of it were mostly positive. I think the search experience still has a ways to go, and that's one of the ways a brand can help these new companies is by flagging instances where their products should show up but aren't. The product detail pages are fairly simple. Image and title are most important, and many products don't have any product details. Reviews also aren't found there. In terms of activations, it's mostly limited to price promotions. There didn't appear to be any paid search options, for example. And like Gopuff, competition varies by category. Some have a ton of competition and others have essentially none. Gorillas was mostly similar. Its home screen tended to have more branded images on it compared to the generic images on the Joker app. PDPs, same thing with image and title, most important. Activations also appear limited to price promotions and nothing on paid search. And again, competition varies by category. One thing to call out is that both Joker and Gorillas are open from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. You'll recall Gopuff is open 24/7, and that was the second most important thing for its shoppers. So Gopuff retains an advantage there. For instant grocers, the big question is around economics. So many of them have entered because there were such low barriers to entry that it's making this a cutthroat part of the market. And I think it's sort of easy to write this segment off saying there's no way that this can succeed over the long term. But on the other hand, if they are really delivering a very convenient experience and consumer retention is strong, then they're likely to continue to be able to raise money and or attract Amazon or Walmart or Instacart as an acquisition candidate. So when it comes to this segment, I'd focus on the ones raising the most capital as a signal to gaining traction. Assign a member of the e-commerce team to go out and build a direct relationship with them, even if you're not fulfilling directly. And help them as much as you can from a taxonomy perspective and a search relevance perspective. Okay, last section, let's talk about Omni-Enablers and more specifically what's happening with grocers and the trade-off they face with Instacart. Again, we're back to the diagram, and this time I've highlighted mostly where the Omni-Enablers play right now, which is essentially enabling that full grocery experience online. Instacart is really the pioneer in the space, but as it grew over the last 18 months, it's attracted others like DoorDash and Uber Eats. And grocers are eager to support alternatives to Instacart, as I'll explain on the next slide. How to think about these Omni-Enablers. Without them, the model is straightforward. Brands worked with the grocer who had the relationship with the consumer. And that meant brands had robust retail programs and funding directed to the grocer. But Omni-Enablers essentially sit between the consumer and the retailer, and they allow the brand to plug into their platform. The benefit to the grocer is the pick-pack delivery capability they enable. Plus, they have their own sources of traffic helping the grocer's customer acquisition. The problem, of course, is that they now are the ones forming that direct relationship with the consumer. But the retailers don't have great alternatives. So they know it's risky, they know it's problematic longer term, but they keep working with them because they need speedy delivery and a digital offering. These visibility layers essentially require organic and paid search attention. They represent a new digital shelf that you need to show up on. In grocery, that has primarily meant taking your learnings from Amazon advertising and applying the same tools, partners, internal people to set up a robust paid search strategy. So the same person internally doing Amazon advertising is going to be the same one managing these Omni-Enabler accounts because they're essentially ad platforms from the brand perspective. The Omni-Enabler model is all about advertising, monetizing the unique data they have. And so that's why I think of them as a visibility layer. You must optimize your content for SEO, and then you essentially have to pay to play on Instacart or more recently DoorDash. All of them have pretty much acknowledged the only way forward is advertising. Because of the risks associated with giving consumer control over to Instacart, grocers are starting to diversify in different ways. Albertsons announced a partnership with DoorDash. Experts in the industry are encouraging grocers to bring picking and packing automation to their stores to ramp up delivery speed and improve the store experience. And then there are white label omni-enablement companies forming to essentially give grocers the ability to do this themselves without having a partner. But you really need a long-term perspective in order to make those investments because it's so easy and productive to work with Instacart and its rivals today rather than build it out yourself. And so Kroger might ultimately be really smart with its Ocado-powered model because it gives it more control over the experience and can potentially enable speedy delivery like what it's doing with its Zoom site in Florida, which is really an attempt to keep up with the e-convenience and instant grocery models that are developing. So in terms of the Omni-Enablers, typically brands are dedicating support for Instacart, and I think that's the individual or team that should now start paying attention to DoorDash and Uber. Funding is still mostly coming from corporate budgets as the industry hasn't really figured out what's incremental and hasn't really come up against having to cut back programs with their grocers. And from an activation standpoint, this is one where it's all about paid search. You should maximize that opportunity first before you start exploring other activations. All right, so that's a look at the developments in the online grocery market. I want to leave you with a few thoughts on what happens from here in the industry. Look, we can't do an e-commerce presentation without bringing Amazon into the fold, and Jeff Bezos in particular. And I think he's relevant here in the sense that His investment focus at Amazon, which is being carried on as he steps down as CEO, is around things that aren't going to change 10 years from now. And one of those things he expressly calls out is fast delivery. It simply is something that consumers want and will increasingly expect. So if I'm a consumer brand professional, that's something you can bank on. And I'd be starting to build direct relationships with Gopuff, DoorDash, and the quick commerce trailblazers in New York. Certainly not all of them are going to succeed, but odds are at least some of them will and come out as an independent, or perhaps are acquired, and you'll want to be there if Amazon announces it bought them. So have conviction that this is more than a flash in the pan moment where capital markets got overly exuberant. Secondly, start building a relationship with DoorDash and Uber Eats. A year or so ago, they really weren't relevant to CPG professionals, but now they are. And you can count on that continuing because the grocers need to instill competition with Instacart so that it doesn't get too powerful. From a tactical standpoint, I do think Gopuff and the instant grocers are going to have different retail media dynamics than, say, Walmart or Amazon Fresh or Instacart. Given the smaller assortment, there's less of a need, at least in some categories, to pay for visibility. And so what you save there could go into more expensive retail programs with them or more expensive costs to serve on the supply chain side. And my final thought is, where the heck are Walmart and Amazon? How long until they enter the e-convenience and quick commerce market? Amazon has done so in the UK with its investment in Deliveroo, but I think it's only a matter of time before we hear from these two about playing in these new parts of the US market. Okay, that's it. We're going to get the chance to take some of your questions, and if you enjoyed the presentation and the data I shared, I do more of that at stratably.com, so check it out, and thank you for watching today.
Thank you so much. Russ, do we have you on the line?
There we go.
Awesome. And Pati, why don't you just leave everything? No, don't feel free. You don't have to switch me to presenter, actually, because this looks great. I like ending on your final slide here. So thanks for joining us today live. I always like to have presenters on live after we have a pre-recorded video, just to kind of address if anything's obviously changed. So let's start out with that question first. We filmed this a little bit ago, so anything to address or updates to be made on any of the content that you originally presented on a few weeks ago?
Yes, and this market is so interesting, and I have that diagram that you guys made come alive. And pretty much every week, every couple of weeks, I have to update that diagram because of just how dynamic it is. And in particular, we filmed this a few weeks ago. Since then, for instance, Jackie, where you live in Chicago, Go Grocer launched its own quick commerce offering. Go Grocer is a physical retailer in the city. They have, I think, a dozen or so different locations. They indicated they had been approached by essentially every quick commerce player to be acquired, but instead of going that route, they launched their own quick commerce offering. So that's an interesting example of a physical retailer sort of leveraging its assets within an urban market to do very 15-minute, sub 15-minute delivery. Getir also launched in Chicago. I think that was last week. Getir is one of the original quick commerce companies. They are based in Turkey, and they have a lot of different European countries that they're in, but this is their first entrance into the US. And sort of interesting about that is, everyone up to that point had sort of entered into New York City, and that's gone, certainly very, very, very competitive as a result. So Getir chose to launch in Chicago. It has expansion plans to New York and I think San Francisco as well. But they're one that is well capitalized and has a ton of experience, and so we've seen another player in that regard. Publix announced that it was going to be partnering with Instacart's priority delivery service. So that was the one where Instacart's putting this like convenience layer on top of Grocers. So they talk about delivering in as fast as 30 minutes. So Publix joins I think I showed in the presentation, giant companies, Stop and Shop and Kroger with that. And then kind of going the other direction from speed is Instacart announced a new initiative here in November around removing delivery fees if the user selects the order to be delivered in 24 hours or later. So they're trying to say like, okay, let's try to make online grocery more affordable. Let's kind of go the other direction and offer sort of like next day plus type delivery, and we'll remove the fee. So it is really, I think, emblematic of the fact that there's a bunch of different type of needs out there in the market and desires in the market. And so this juxtaposition of delivery speed and assortment, you're pretty much going to see all the players in the space trying to cover kind of the whole gamut, of these different use cases. You're going to see partnerships evolve and develop as a result. But that's like 4 things that have developed, in just the last couple of weeks since we filmed this. So it's just a really dynamic part of the market. And if you're in food and CPG, it's actually kind of challenging to keep up with it all, frankly, but fun, nonetheless.
I was going to say, it wasn't like months ago that we filmed. So for there to be that much development or needing to even add to the chart or move some of the players somewhere else, I mean, our editor would have killed me, right? So
right. Exactly.
No, that's great. So just a reminder, everyone on the call, if you have a question for Russ, go ahead and enter that in the chat box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, and we will get that over to him. So the next one. So do you think delivery in 10 minutes is really all that different from an hour? In other words, is this really satisfying a real need, or are they kind of overshooting what consumers actually really want and need?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's in some respects to be determined. Like, is Instacart's priority delivery in as fast as 30, is that essentially the same user experience as getting an item in 10 minutes? And the nice thing is we're going to see that play out over the next year or so and see which of these services takes off. This is not the most rigorous answer, but what I can tell you from my personal experience using kind of these different platforms is when you order something online and have it in hand in 14 minutes, it feels different than like 5 hours, which Amazon can do in an increasing number of markets. It feels even different than 2 hours or 1 hour, in my opinion. Now, 15 minus 30, I don't know. We're starting to get into like diminishing returns with that. But I tend to think it does make a bit of a difference. And so we'll see. And then we'll see also over the next year, we'll see kind of what the limits are. It's like 10 minutes the limit, is like 8 minutes the limit. I mean, it's pretty amazing how fast. And I'm here in Cleveland. I'm not in New York. I'm not in Chicago. So to be able to have like some of these services available in a market like Cleveland, I think is just really interesting. And that's why at the end there I say like Walmart and Amazon, they're not ignoring this. Like they've been kind of quiet in this space, but they can't ignore it because I think it resets the consumer expectation. So when I got a 14-minute delivery, incredible. It's like magical, right? And now if I order something on Amazon and it takes a day or 2 to get here, I'm like, no, that seems like a long time. So it has, and that's I think why the capital has come in and why these companies are able to raise so much money, because it does have this potential to really reset consumer expectations. And these companies are developing an expertise in the ability to deliver that quickly. And so I think that's what's so compelling about the model. Not all of them are gonna survive and go on to become, they're not all going to be billion-dollar companies, but I do think some will, and I think it's because it aligns with the consumer and what they want, and so that's what's attracted a lot of investors to the space.
For sure. Yeah, this one kind of dovetails nicely. Is convenience just the race to the bottom? Once speed is ubiquitous, then what will these quick commerce companies deliver on, do you think?
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is you've got 10 companies all saying, hey, we'll do it in 15 minutes. So you're seeing it play out a little bit like, as an example, Joker is trying to take like a little bit of a sustainability angle to it. Like they're going to try to make that part of the value proposition for their service. So, we haven't necessarily seen real differences in pricing strategy. You do have some differences in delivery fee strategy. So some it's free, others they charge a couple dollars for delivery. So maybe that all the delivery fees go away, and they're really going to be burning money. But I think that's to be determined. Sustainability is one kind of dimension, but I think as this market matures, we'll start to see like, okay, how are they differentiating beyond delivery speed because it's sort of all equal, beyond delivery fees because it's all equal. What happens from a pricing perspective? Maybe they're able to roll out memberships. That's going to evolve, I think, over time.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. All right. So the next one, do you think quick commerce will come to other categories beyond grocery?
I do. I think that particularly because Instacart and DoorDash and Uber Eats are getting more involved, and those companies are already making inroads into other categories.
Okay.
And so I just like they're a platform that can be applied essentially to any type of category. They've already made strategic partnerships with different retailers like a Bed Bath & Beyond, to use just that kind of top of mind example. And so I think that they're going to want to be able to deliver, I guess, a bedspread, to stay with the Bed Bath & Beyond example.
There you go.
I haven't been to Bed Bath in a while, so it was like a bedspread, like college, like bedspreads. I think they're going to want to be able to deliver a bedspread in 30 minutes, 20 minutes, or whatever, just like they're going to want to deliver infant Tylenol that quickly. So that's why I always try to, like, I was talking to a large group of consumer brands yesterday, and they are not in the grocery space, but I brought up the grocery market just to sort of illustrate, like, hey, all this stuff's happening in grocery right now, but I do expect it to bleed into other categories. It might take time, and maybe we don't ever get to 10 minutes in like home improvement or something like that, but it is kind of all heading in that direction.
Yeah, or I was going to say, I think some categories probably more susceptible to an instant type of need than others, but outside food, they're all going to vary, right? So
yeah, and just the consumer, like, to get back to your other question, like, do they need something in 10 minutes or 15 minutes? It's like probably not, but it's really not about need. It's just all about want. It's convenience and what do they want. It's not really about need. So, but I think I can envision a future in which we're able to receive a lot of different types of categories very quickly. And I don't, Amazon, I think I mentioned this, is, they're able to do 5-hour delivery in maybe a dozen or so markets, I think, on like 3 million items. So that chart would go crazy. You'd have to put Amazon way out on the assortment side, but it's 5 hours.
Right.
So how quickly can they whittle 5 into 4 into 3 into 2 into 1, etc. So I do think the market's going to eventually catch up to all categories, or most categories in the next couple of years. Probably is the right timeline.
Yeah, that's great. All right, the next one. Why do you think Amazon Fresh hasn't entered the quick commerce arena? I know you touched on Amazon a little bit, but why do you think they're not there yet with their Amazon Fresh offering?
I think, you never count out Amazon. You never bet against Amazon in this space. So I do anticipate we're going to see something from it in quick commerce in the next year or so, if not sooner. But I think in some respects, I think they have their hands full with what they're trying to do in grocery with fresh.com and their fresh physical stores, and the back-end supply chain that supports those businesses, the fresh.com and fresh stores, that's already fairly taxed and not necessarily set up to support both, but they're trying to make it work to support both. But it has not been easy for them. They have very aggressive expansion plans for those businesses as well. So I almost kind of think my answer to that is I feel like they're just focused in other areas and they're not necessarily really set up to do 15-minute delivery in grocery right now. But again, Amazon has essentially unlimited resources. How shocking would it be if, we woke up to a headline one morning that, hey, they entered, Seattle with quick commerce and they have 10, micro facilities dotted around the city, and they can do delivery in 10 minutes. So they're coming, Walmart's coming, they're all going to come, and maybe they acquire some of these. Maybe they just do it on their own, but I would anticipate them coming. And that's where I think, again, like if you're in an e-commerce team side of consumer brand, like now's the time to try to build those relationships with the quick commerce players, and you'll learn a lot, you'll understand how that model works, and then if Amazon does get into it, maybe you can be a thought leader with them and a great partner for them as they kind of build that up. So I just think it's important that, even though it would be a very small part of your business today, you want to try to be building those relationships today.
Yep, and be ready for it. Great. All right, well, that is the last question that we have in the queue. So I want to just kind of finish up with, any final comments from you, and maybe give us a little taste of how attendees can, get more engaged with your work, your ongoing work, if they would like to do that.
Yeah, so online grocery is one of the topics I cover, but like I led off with, I really try to cover a breadth of topics that are relevant to e-commerce teams inside of established consumer brands. And so again, we're talking instant grocery today, we're talking Gopuff, but my work that I publish on a weekly basis, almost a daily basis at Stratably.com really tries to cover this breadth of topics. And it's meant to do really two things. It's meant to help elevate the thinking inside of e-commerce teams and kind of help them stay on top of the market, see around the corner, and also provide resources to help them educate the broader organization. Like we're years into this journey of e-commerce, but still there's such an information asymmetry between the e-commerce team and the rest of the organization. And so if you're leading e-commerce, a big part of your role, it's not on your job description, but it's like, hey, help educate the organization on what it takes to be successful online. And so I create a lot of my content with the purpose of trying to make that easy. Like, hey, look at this quick thing from Stratably to understand the grocery market, as an example. So it's real easy. You can go to stratably.com. You can sign up for free version. I have a very approachable subscription price point is the other option. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. I publish a lot of content there, but hopefully my enthusiasm for this space came through. I'm really into this stuff. I spend all of my time, my work time, and a lot of my personal time just reading about this space and doing research on it. So I love it. Love talking to people about it. So email me whenever at the address you see there. Check out stratably.com, follow me on LinkedIn, and that would be the best way to get involved.
Perfect. All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. As a reminder, we will send out a copy of the recording to everyone that registered over the next day or so. And like Russ said, he's got his email right there. Or if you'd like more information, feel free to just reach out to your contact at the CMA or SEMA, and we can put you in touch with Russ as well. So thanks, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jackie.
See ya.